Formula One fans, the 2026 cars will be completely different. And there's a question everyone is asking. Will Ferrari be more suited to Leclerc's style? The characteristics of the new generation of Formula One could favor the Monegasque over Hamilton. And not only that, driving styles will have to change radically. How drivers approach corners, entry, and exit will be completely different in this new 50/50 electric era of Formula One. The 2026 cars should possess oversteer characteristics at their core, according to reports from F1’s No Analysis Technica. The reduced downforce compared to the ground effect era and the more aggressive engine torque suggest this scenario, and this favors Leclerc. Number 16 can drive over the car's problems. Having a more unstable rear for him seems almost an advantage that allows him to modulate the car's rotation as he wants. Hamilton instead has always preferred a planted rear end, and with the new characteristics could find himself struggling. But it's not just about oversteer. Energy management will be crucial. Stay with me because what I'm about to tell you will change your understanding of 2026. The 2026 cars are arriving and will feel completely different compared to the previous regulation set. Driving styles will have to change. How drivers approach corner entry and exit will be completely different in this new 50/50 electric era of Formula One. In general, the mindset entering race weekend will change for these drivers, and obviously with this follows driving style, how they'll approach their weekend. And what will be the new driving style for this new Formula One period? Because with this new set of active aerodynamics and energy management, these cars will become much more difficult, especially at the beginning. To understand how much they must change for 26, it's useful to know what they had to do in the previous regulation set. And obviously Max Verstappen was by far the best driver in this regulation set. Not only did he have the best car most of the time, but he somehow paved the way on how every driver needed to drive these cars to extract maximum pace. These cars were extremely stiff, and even Max Verstappen stated the vertical G they were hitting on some bumps on track was about 9G, which is crazy to think about, but only shows the car's stiffness and what was required to have very balanced aerodynamic load, because these cars relied so much on the underbody to get so much performance. Obviously, we had all that porpoising problem at the beginning in 2022, but teams managed to reduce it quite quickly. But ride height was extremely important to gain pace on track essentially for free. These cars in high-speed corners were the fastest we've ever seen, practically going flat out through corners we'd never seen flat before. But as I said, on curbs and really any of those bumps around the corner, it was a major hassle to deal with. And sometimes we saw accidents because of this. I doubt we'll see the same amount of retirements as we saw from 22 to 25 when it came to plank wear, because it shouldn't be a problem in the new regulations. The driving style required a bit of oversteer because they were very heavy, boat-like, and low-speed corners sucked pretty badly for practically everyone unless you could control the car like Max did. Fluidity, but using oversteer to really turn the car. Leclerc did something similar in that case, but with a bit more sliding. Lewis never really got into these regulations because of that reason. 2023 was quite successful, but this was because the car was quite well balanced, but never the fastest. In 2025, we learned to understand how Leclerc's and Hamilton's driving styles resemble each other from different points of view, but differ under others. If the Monegasque has always preferred a very precise front axle, even at the expense of a more nervous rear, the 7-time champion? Not exactly. Sir Lewis indeed wants a responsive front, but to insert the car and apply throttle, he needs a planted rear end. Obviously, the SF25 didn't have this quality, and therefore it was difficult for him to stay ahead of his teammate. The Brit has hated ground effect Formula One cars. Will it be the same with those of 2026? As already repeated previously, number 16 can drive over the car's problems. Having a more unstable rear for him seems almost an advantage that allows him to modulate the car's rotation as he wants. Obviously, having a balanced car on both axes is always a benefit, but Leclerc can adapt easily. Hamilton instead cannot. According to reports from F1’s Analysis Technica, the Formula One generation debuting in 2026 should possess oversteer characteristics at their core. The reduced downforce compared to the ground effect era and the more aggressive engine torque suggest this scenario. If this is the case, the adaptation phase would be simpler for the Monegasque. At least this is what emerges from the simulator. In 2026, it will be a complete flip from how these cars were driven. Now these cars are made to be more agile. We've already had a report they'll all be overweight. I think this was expected. Probably toward the second, or maybe even entering the beginning of the third season, we'll have all these cars at the weight limit while they try to maximize their aerodynamic packages around them. But 30 kilos lighter will make a difference when they reach that point. And the cars are a bit smaller, so they'll be a bit less balanced than these. And obviously that 30% less overall downforce goes together with what I'm saying. The car will feel less loaded compared to the previous regulation set. Power unit and energy management. We've already heard drivers mention this. Sometimes downshifting on straights to have more power entering the next lap, or for the next set of corners. They must manage that energy recovery more actively, using braking to charge the battery and then distributing it strategically. Pushing beyond the limit will be essential in races and actually lift and coast. So maybe Ferrari was a step ahead of everyone else. They thought with their brain, a bit going into 2026. Obviously this is a joke, but lifting and coasting won't be like it was in the previous set where it was plank management. But in this case, lifting and coasting to have more battery to use on straights, or for overtaking opportunities. The cars will have significantly less downforce and ride heights won't be as important, but setups obviously will be crucial no matter what. Because with this having active aerodynamics, you want that balance to be practically neutral. The movable elements of the front and rear wing will require constant driver input and setup changes during free practice 1, 2, and 3. And then, obviously, those sprint weekends. This would therefore make rear-end management much more complicated. You must also take into account how the new tires proposed by Pirelli will react in terms of grip. It's easy to imagine Hamilton therefore again in difficulty, especially considering advancing years. At Mercedes, he always had cars with lots of downforce and lots of technical goodness. Since these elements have been missing, we've seen him collapse almost completely. We'll see which of the two starts better, hoping the 678 allows them to fight for top positions. This is the situation of the 2026 Ferrari, and whether it will be more suited to Leclerc. The oversteer characteristics at the core favor the Monegasque. Reduced downforce and ground effect, aggressive engine torque, Leclerc drives over unstable rear problems, Hamilton wants planted rear end. Energy management will be crucial. Lift and coast, downshifting on straights, battery recovery braking, active aerodynamics constant input. More agile cars 30 kilos lighter, 30% less downforce, adaptable drivers will succeed. Brain beats raw talent at the beginning. Pirelli tires grip unknown. Hamilton could struggle with advancing years. Always had lots of downforce at Mercedes. We'll see who starts better, hoping 678 allows fighting for high positions. But Leclerc seems favored by the intrinsic characteristics of the new generation.